Hey everyone, today we are talking about how to use ISO when shooting in manual mode on your camera. But if this is your first time joining us, this is actually the third tutorial in a 3-part series. So if you haven't listened to those other 2 videos, you may want to hit pause on this one and go over to the other 2, which cover shutter speed and aperture, because in my opinion, it's best to master those first before moving on to ISO. But first, how about a little intro? Hey everyone, welcome to Lessons with Lo. This is Lauren of Lauren Elise Photography, or better known to my friends as Lo. This is an educational series for everyone from early beginners in photography to more seasoned hobbyists and professionals. Welcome. Let's begin our lesson on ISO. So first things first, a lot of people think that ISO is actually pronounced ISO because they think that it's an acronym. And while there is an acronym in photography world that stands for International Organization for Standardization, that is not what we're referring to when we talk about our camera. So we say ISO or ISO speed instead of ISO. Alright, so now that we have the cool photography jargon out of the way, let's dive into what ISO actually means. ISO was initially defined for film photography to describe how sensitive the film was to light, and it was then adopted to digital photography for the purpose of talking about the brightness level of an image. So let's go back to our film days to talk about this idea a little bit more. When you would purchase a roll of film, it would have a number on it, like 200 or 800. The lower the number, the less sensitive the film was to light. So if you were taking your camera out on a really sunny day, you would buy a roll of film with a number lower, like 200 ISO, because you didn't need your film to be very sensitive, because there's a ton of light out there and it doesn't have to work very hard. But if you were going out on a particularly gloomy day or at golden hour, you would need your film to work a little bit harder because there'd be less light available. So you'd buy a roll of film with an ISO that was higher, like 800. This concept was later adopted by digital photography, except instead of talking about how sensitive film is or a sensor is, all ISO refers to is the brightness level of the image. Every camera has a different range of ISO values. Usually starts around 100, and depending on the professional level of your camera, could go anywhere up to 3200 all the way up to like 24,000 and even higher. Simply put, the lower the number for your ISO speed, the darker the image, and the higher number, the brighter the image. And to go even further, when you double your ISO speed, you are doubling the brightness of the photo. So a photo at ISO 200 will be twice as bright as an ISO 100, or an ISO 1600 will be twice as bright as an ISO 800. You might be wondering why I don't start with ISO first. I mean, if I can just kick up the ISO and brighten the image, why wouldn't I do that first before messing with the aperture and the shutter speed? Well, the reason is of the 3 between shutter speed, aperture, and ISO affects the quality of your image the most. As you bring up the ISO, you'll notice that your photo starts to get really grainy. And the higher you go with your ISO, the more and more grainy your image will get, which really affects the quality of your image. Let's take a look. So here I have an image in broad daylight at an ISO of 100. And if we zoom in, we'll notice that there is no grain, no matter how close up I get. But then I have this other image I took at another wedding at golden hour where my ISO was set at 1600 because we were losing sun quickly and I just needed a little bit of boost to get the image a bit brighter. And when you zoom in, you'll notice there absolutely is grain. Now, luckily the grain isn't too bad, and I knew what I was doing when I took this image, and I was willing to sacrifice a little bit of the quality to get that brightness, and in this case, I think the grain kind of works. It gives it a little bit of that mystical, whimsical feel, but if I had gone up any higher, I'd really lose quality in the image. So while it's tempting to just kick up your ISO and get a really bright image, it's best to go through the steps and work through your aperture first, then your shutter speed, and finally your ISO, so that you don't sacrifice the quality of the image just for convenience. So let's recap what we've learned. ISO started in film, and it was based on the sensitivity of the film. But now that we're in digital photography, it really has nothing to do with the sensitivity of anything, and more just refers to the brightness of the image. every stop that you go up in ISO is double the brightness of the one below it. And you do sacrifice the quality of your image as you go up in ISO speed, so just be very careful to do this piece last and to watch how high you're going with your ISO so that you don't get too much grain in your image and lose the quality. Well, I think that's everything you need to know for ISO in order to get you started. So get your cameras out, go play around, start with aperture first so you can get your style set, move through shutter speed, and then finally ISO. Go indoors, outdoors, sunny and shady spots so you can really play around with all the lighting and everything that you're going to need to move around on your manual mode in order to get the perfect shot. Working in manual mode might take you some time in the beginning to move all those settings around and to read your light meter, but I promise if you put in the time, it will get easier and it won't take as long. So before you get too frustrated and just switch it over to auto, keep pushing through. I promise it'll become second nature one day and it will be so worth it. Thank you so much for joining me today on this tutorial, and if you listened to my 2 others, thank you. I really hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for even more lessons with Lo.